On June 6, 1944, 197 Americans died storming Utah Beach. 6 weeks earlier, 749 Americans died in the same waters. Not fighting, practicing, the Army classified it. Survivors were threatened with court-martial if they talked. Families were told nothing, and for nearly 40 years, nobody outside that beach knew what happened. This is the story of Exercise Tiger, the largest dress rehearsal for the D-Day landings, a full-scale simulation of the Utah Beach assault conducted off the Devon coast in April 1944, and the greatest military training disaster in American history. More Americans died at Slapton Sands than on the beach they were rehearsing for. Not because of the enemy, because of a miscommunication about radio frequencies, because of a life belt that nobody explained how to wear, and because 9 German torpedo boats found them in the dark. By April 1944, Operation Overlord was 6 weeks from execution. Millions of men, thousands of ships. The most complex military operation ever attempted. General Eisenhower had made one iron demand of every rehearsal. It had to feel real, live ammunition, real naval bombardment, everything exactly as it would be on D-Day. Because the men going ashore were young, many of them untested in combat, and they needed to know what it smelled like. Slapton Sands in South Devon was chosen because it was a near-perfect geographic match for Utah Beach in Normandy. A shingle beach, a strip of land, then a freshwater lagoon behind it, exactly mirroring the flooded lowlands American troops would have to cross after landing. In November 1943, the Army gave 3,000 civilians 6 weeks to evacuate. Farmers, families, an entire community. Gone. So, American boys could learn to die on a beach that looked like somewhere else. Exercise Tiger ran from April 22nd to 30th, 1944. 8 massive landing ship tanks, LSTs, loaded with vehicles, live ammunition, and soldiers of the 4th Infantry Division. Roughly 30,000 American troops in and around Lime Bay, the final definitive rehearsal. What happened next was never supposed to leave Devon. April 27, 1944. The first phase of Exercise Tiger, the beach assault. Naval gunfire was scheduled to bombard the beach from 6:40 until just before H hour, set for 7:30. A white tape line on the sand marked the kill zone. Do not advance past the tape until the shelling stops. Several landing craft fell behind schedule. Admiral Don Moon made a decision: delay H hour by 60 minutes to 8:30. He made this decision 5 minutes before the original execution time. Not everyone got the order. A typographical error in the exercise orders had given some units the wrong radio frequency. They were on the wrong channel. The revised H-hour delay never reached them. Second wave troops hit the beach at the original 7:30, directly into ongoing live naval bombardment. They walked through the white tape, into a kill zone that wasn't supposed to be active anymore. Historians estimate that somewhere between 110 and 450 Americans were killed by friendly fire on April 27th. The Army never officially acknowledged a specific number. Eisenhower, Montgomery, and Admiral Ramsey were observing from offshore. They watched it happen. Rear Admiral Don Moon was 50 years old, a perfectionist, a career naval officer from Kokomo, Indiana, who had worked his entire life toward a moment like this. Commanding the naval element of the Utah Beach Assault Force was the pinnacle of his career, and it was already going wrong. That afternoon, troops of the exercise's second echelon boarded 8 LSTs in Plymouth and Brixham, heading out into Lime Bay. Nobody told them what had happened on the beach that day. The convoy was assigned 2 warships as escort. The corvette HMS Azalea, a 200-foot anti-submarine vessel armed primarily with depth charges, and the destroyer HMS Scimitar. The night before, Scimitar had been in a collision. She returned to Plymouth for repairs. Her captain requested permission to rejoin the convoy. Refused. A replacement destroyer was dispatched 30 miles away. Due to a typographical error in communications, the American convoy was never told their destroyer escort would not be there. 8 ships carrying thousands of men loaded with live ammunition and fueled vehicles traveling at 5 knots in a single straight line through Lime Bay, escorted by 1 corvette. 100 miles south in Cherbourg Harbor, 9 German E-boats were receiving intelligence. Luftwaffe reconnaissance had overflown Lime Bay 2 days earlier. German signals intelligence had intercepted heavy Allied radio traffic. Shortly before midnight, headquarters radioed a bearing. 9 E-boats made for Lime Bay at 43 knots. Each carried 2 torpedo tubes. The men aboard the LSTs didn't know they were coming. Most were below decks, sleeping or playing cards. LST 507 motor mechanic Angelo Crapanzano was 19 years old. He heard gunfire in the distance and asked an officer what was happening. The officer told him, "I guess they're trying to make it as real as possible." At approximately 2 o'clock, a torpedo struck LST 507. Crapanzano: "The ship was split in half and burning fire went from the bow all the way back to the wheelhouse. Trucks on the tank deck, fully fueled for maximum realism, caught fire instantly. The heat was so intense that men's shoes began smoking where they stood on deck above. Lieutenant Eugene Extam, the ship's medical officer, went below to help the wounded. He opened the hatch to the tank deck. He found himself looking into a roaring inferno. Navy regulations required him to consider the ship's integrity first. He closed the hatch and secured it. He could hear the screaming from inside. He later said, 'The screams and cries of those many Army troops in there still haunt me.' At 2:15, 2 torpedoes struck LST 531. Survivor Emmanuel Rubin watched from another ship. A gigantic orange ball explosion, like something from the movies. A flame, like it had come from hell, with little black specks around the edges which we knew were jeeps or boat stanchions or men. LST 531 sank in 6 minutes. Hundreds of men went into the water with it. The channel water that night was 42 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, cold shock occurs within minutes, incapacitation within 15, unconsciousness within an hour. Here is the fact that defines Exercise Tiger more than any other. Army troops had been issued inflatable CO2 life belts. Nobody had explained how to wear them. The belt was designed to go under the arms, across the chest, but 60-pound packs, rifles, and full combat gear left no room there. The only available space was around the waist. When men jumped into the water, the buoyancy at their waists flipped them face down. Lieutenant Extam described what he saw. A lot of them were found floating upside down with their feet in the air. On the raft, Crapanzano tried to keep the others awake. "I kept saying to them, 'Don't fall asleep. Whatever you do, if you fall asleep, you're dead.' But they slipped away one after another. After 4.5 hours in 42-degree water, a light appeared. LST 515, the lead ship, whose captain had disobeyed orders to proceed to port and turned back to search for survivors. A crewman spotted Crapanzano's head and initially thought it was another corpse. Then it moved. Crapanzano never told anyone what happened that night, not even his psychiatrist, for over 30 years. Eisenhower was briefed on April 29th. He had 2 immediate reactions. First, rage at the convoy formation, the missing destroyer, the radio frequency failures. Second, something worse than rage. Among the 749 dead and missing were 10 American officers with Bigot clearance. Bigot was a classification above top secret. Officers with Bigot clearance knew the specific details of the Normandy invasion, when it would happen, exactly where both the Utah and Omaha landings would occur, the approach routes, the deception operations. These 10 men knew everything, and they were unaccounted for. German E-boats had been spotted sweeping searchlights through the floating wreckage after the attack. There was no way to know if they'd found anything or anyone. If even one Bigot-cleared officer had been pulled from the water alive, D-Day could not proceed. The Germans would know the target and the date. 3 million Allied soldiers would land on a beach the enemy was waiting for. According to his aide Harry Butcher, Eisenhower prepared to reconsider all operations in the European theater. Of the 248 bodies eventually pulled from the channel, all 10 Bigot-cleared officers were among them. It was described by the men who ordered the search as one of those amazing miracles which characterize war. D-Day planning resumed. The invasion would proceed on schedule. The survivors were taken to barracks under armed guard, ordered, under threat of court-martial, not to discuss the incident with anyone outside their immediate group. Families received death notifications. The telegrams listed a date. Nothing else. No ship name, no location, no cause. In August 1944, 2 months after D-Day, SHAF released overall casualty figures. Exercise Tiger's dead were folded quietly into the larger numbers. A brief notice appeared in Stars and Stripes, noticed by almost no one, buried under the cascade of D-Day news. The 749 men were accounted for, just not explained. On August 5, 1944, aboard USS Bayfield in Naples Harbor, 10 days before he was to command the invasion of southern France, Admiral Moon was found by a steward sitting on his sofa with a .45 caliber pistol in his right hand. His note read, "The mind is gone. I am sick, so sick." The German E-boat commander whose flotilla killed 749 of Moon's men later became an admiral in the West German Navy. For the families, the silence held for decades. A mother whose son died on LST 531 spent years half believing he was alive somewhere, suffering from amnesia. She went to her grave not knowing how he died. Ken Small, the British man who ultimately broke the story open, put it plainly, it was never covered up. It was conveniently forgotten. Small spent years tracking down the rightful owner of a Sherman DD tank sitting on the floor of Lime Bay since April 28, 1944. He purchased it from the United States government for $50. It took another decade to raise it. On May 17, 1984, with television cameras rolling, the Sherman broke the surface of Lime Bay. The story went international overnight. In 2019, for the 75th anniversary, artist Martin Barraud laid 749 pairs of boot prints on the shingle at Slapton Sands. One for every man killed. A U.S. Rear Admiral flew from Washington to stand on the beach where they practiced 75 years after the fact. The changes Exercise Tiger forced saved lives on D-Day. Radio frequency standardized, life belt training mandated, rescue craft designated. The mistakes at Slapton Sands, the ones that killed 749 men, were fixed before June 6th. The men who took Utah Beach benefited from lessons paid for in the Channel 6 weeks earlier. They didn't know that. They weren't allowed to. Ken Small died of cancer in March 2004, weeks before the 60th anniversary. He never saw the 749 boot prints. He found bullets and rings on a beach, bought a sunken tank for $50, and forced the world to remember that 749 Americans practiced dying here before they went to do it for real. The Army buried it, but the Channel kept giving it back.